As always, thanks for tuning in to another episode of History Before Us, where we travel the country capturing, preserving, and advocating for influential history and often overlooked history. Today we're in historic Old Salem visiting St. Philip's Moravian Church, the oldest standing African American church in North Carolina. During my visit, I had the honor of speaking with Ms. Dorothy Pettus, whose dedication to preserving this history reminds us that our elders are still carrying the responsibilities of protecting these stories. If they can continue to fight, we should all be willing to do our part collectively. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to History Before Us. Share this video and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future episodes. Let's make sure to continue learning together, and also consider becoming a member. So you said in 1822 the church began outside of Salem.
Yeah, they call them the Negroes then. They start worshiping in a barn with somebody, one of the Moravians owned outside of Salem. Then they, with the help of the Moravian women missionaries, they built this log church here. In 1823, they began service there.
Okay.
But over the years, the church, the building just kind of fell apart. So in the 90s, they reconstructed that log building.
Okay.
And it was mostly for tours. But then when COVID hit, the tours stopped. Well, the members outgrew that log church and they built this church.
What year was it that they, do you know, outgrew?
I think about 1840.
So rather quickly.
Uh-huh.
And these were free black folks,
No.
or were they enslaved black folks?
They were enslaved and free from surrounding farms. So y'all, you can imagine back there, it was just farms everywhere.
Farms everywhere. Yeah.
So it was the enslaved people here in Salem and outside that came to worship.
Okay.
So they moved here when the church grew. And I think about 1840, the new part was, actually, if you come on in here, I can show you.
And it's interesting because so you're having you have individuals who are formerly enslaved as well as enslaved in the same sanctuary. And not having to sit up in slave galleries like they were in others.
The Moravians were very lenient and accepting when they came here, very accepting. But they took on the practice of the surrounding community. They didn't believe in slavery, but they needed labor.
For sure.
So they actually rented slaves from surrounding farmers.
So how does that make you feel though? Because you're still enslaved, right? And I hear what you're saying about them being more lenient, and I'm aware of that.
Well, actually, everything I've read, I was just reading something just now. The slaves that were hired to work inside Salem begged the people here to buy them because they were treated so much better.
Yeah.
And
the lesser of the two evils then.
So it was a few years later that the church did purchase some slaves, but not individuals.
Okay.
If I'm an individual Moravian, I wasn't allowed to.
It was the church as
the church,
entirety.
Yeah, church office could.
Okay.
And they actually worship with the white members up at the main church, home church, is what it's called. And they all worshiped together and were accepted. But then the surrounding community didn't think that was appropriate. So that's when they started worshiping outside of the church.
Wow.
Yeah, but then this part was added on later. When you saw the sign out there saying strangers,
Yes, strangers.
this part was the burial site for strangers and soldiers. You got to remember now, this was during the Revolutionary War, and they would have been buried here. But later on, the church needed the space, so they built this part 20-some years later, I think.
On top of
The graves. And people said, well, how cruel. But actually, it's not. if you go to a lot of the European countries, that happened. The burial grounds are under the church.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't either. I learned that not long ago. But
And so this would be outside, out front, y'all, there's a sign that says a graveyard for strangers.
yeah, and then the other part was for the church members.
Okay.
And it talks about the strangers' graveyard in the Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
And they didn't have to be soldiers. They could have been somebody that came to Salem and wasn't a Moravian, and died, and they buried them here. So.
Okay. Yeah. So, can you explain to people what being if you're able to explain to people what is being a Black Moravian versus the differences of other churches in which we know in the South, Baptist, Pentecostal, a different type of.
It's just a different service, totally different. Mm-hmm. It's more akin to the Lutheran and the Catholic, because I remember with early years when we would come in behind the pews at the other church, you had the kneeling benches. Yes. And some of the churches still have that. The Moravian churches still have that. And the service was conducted differently.
So no shouting?
No shouting. No testimony, whatever, none of that. What you call it, testimonies, none of that. It's a very kind of strict, laid out service, It's been passed down through history, and they don't want you to veer from that.
Sure.
We've tried to bring in, because it was so difficult to get a Black Moravian minister, we tried to bring in some from the community, but with their Baptist background and everything, they just didn't fit in, and the Moravian Church as a whole, they are really strict on that.
And so we know that during the emancipation of enslaved humans, it was read here at this church.
Yeah, I'll show you right now.
Okay.
You can see the difference in the wood here. This was the old part that was first built. Yep. And later on, this, like I said, this was added later, maybe 20 years later.
Okay.
So we'll go on in here to the sanctuary. Original floors.
Yes.
Original pews.
Oh, wow. The divider, was that to separate the men and women?
There's a reason for that, yes.
Okay.
It was called the choir system. Nothing to do with singing, but the choir system separated the men from the women. Okay. And it was followed in all the Moravian churches. It's still followed in the graveyards. If you died and your wife died, you wouldn't be buried together. You would be buried in the men's section for that year or whatever time it was. That's a separation. It's called the choir system.
The choir system. Definitely a different choir than I know.
Yeah, nothing to do with singing. The Proclamation of Emancipation was read right here.
Right here is
in this sanctuary.
Wow.
In fact, June 19th at 7 p.m., they're doing a reenactment of it. Okay. They'll be dressed in the costumes, and when the chaplain came through and read it.
That's pretty powerful. Mm-hmm. So for you, obviously being a person that loves history, to know that was read right here, and you have been going to this church for 60 years, I'm sure you still to this day, potentially get chills from just knowing.
Well, actually, this church was closed down, this building, not church, building, was closed in 1952, and they moved to a place called Happy Hill Gardens.
Yep, I'm familiar.
Yeah.
So Abrea took me there.
They worshiped in a recreation center until the new church was built. Okay. Well, they were only in the new church for 9 years when the highway system came through. And by that time, I was going to that church up on Valgrave, the brick church up there. Then in 1967, we moved across town to Bon Air. And we stayed there many years. In 2019, the church membership had dropped, so the building was larger and, not enough members to even keep the building going. So we sold that building, moved back down here to this building in 2019. And that's where we've been since.
That's where you've been ever since. How does it feel to be back in this building, though? Because this is,
When I walked in here,
talk to me.
it was like something spiritual just went over you.
Yeah.
You just had a certain feeling, and you could feel it. And not only that, a lot of people come in and say, when I come in that building, it's something that goes over you.
It feels peaceful.
Yeah, very peaceful. And people
Like
say,
right now, it does. It's just
people
like...
say, you're not scared. I clean down here most every Saturday, and I just do work around here. You're not afraid to be in there by yourself. I say, honey, that's the most peaceful place I get to go to. It is. You can feel it.
Yeah, you can. Like I feel, very much at rest right now.
We had a member. Her husband died during COVID. He was an elderly man, but he said when he was about 10 or 12 years old, it was his job to come in early and start the fires in the stove so to keep it warm.
Yeah. You have two of them.
Yeah.
Let's check them out. And these are original?
No, these are kind of replicas,
but would have so a replica of the time. Yeah. Okay. Wow. How many Black Moravian churches? This is the only one in North Carolina?
This is the only Black Moravian church. Statistically, the only Black Moravian church in the United States.
Really?
The only one in North Carolina for sure, but the only one in the United States. Now, there have been some other Moravian church that popped up in the Florida area. They were mostly from the islands.
Okay.
So we got 2 or 3 down in Florida, but they are made up of people from the Caribbean.
Okay. Wow. That's amazing.
Now, the Moravians did go to the Caribbean before they came over here to North America, Caribbean and South America, because we have one member that's from Guyana.
Okay.
In South America, and they were Moravians before North America.
Okay, that's quite interesting for sure. Do you ever get, because again, we're in the South and people think Baptist and, Church of God in Christ and other, so how have you navigated the world whenever, church is discussed and you're saying, well, I'm a Moravian, right? I'm a member of the Moravian Church.
The first thing they're gonna ask you, is that Mormon? I say, no, we worship just like anybody else, but the service is quite different.
Yeah.
But
does anyone find it weird, if you will?
They find it boring and quiet.
Yeah.
Because they, in fact, my grandchildren were raised in the church. Nana, it's so boring there. They go to other churches that are more upbeat, and the music is different.
Yep.
And the preaching is different.
Yep, everything.
They more like, I like it because it was more like a lecture. And that's why I say the service is different. And a lot of Blacks don't like that.
No,
you can't recruit people in. The membership is small, and it'll probably stay small because the ones that do go to church now, a lot of people don't go, but they do like, Black people like a more upbeat service.
Clapping, singing, music, tambourines, shaking, and that's how I was raised. So in its heyday, how many people, when you were here, filled up these pews?
Now, I heard there would be 200 in here.
Really?
Now, when we moved to in '67 to Bon Air, well, the minister, first of all, that started here and preached over in Gardens was from Nicaragua.
Okay.
And he grew up Moravian because in South America they had a lot of Moravians. And he came to, he was a professor at Winston-Salem, used to be Teachers College. He was a professor there, and George Hall, it was his name, and he was the first Black Moravian minister that we had. Before then, it was different white Moravian ministers, and they still do that. The guy that we have now is not full-time at all. He comes and preaches 3 Sundays, but I have to fill in with another Moravian minister, and all of them are white.
Okay.
Because there are no black Moravians.
Yeah.
Then we did have one lady that was a minister at Baptist Church, but when Reverend Rodney, Reverend Rodney was from Guyana too, and when he retired, the PEC, the elder board of the church, they hired her with the stipulation that she go to Bethlehem and study the Moravian doctrine. So that's what she did, and she was actually a Moravian minister.
Okay.
And she left. She was there about 8 or 9 years, I think, and then she went to a Moravian church in New York.
New York, okay.
Before she came here. But it's just very difficult. They have some black Moravian students that go to the seminary, but a lot of them go back home to the islands or to Africa, wherever.
Yeah.
Actually, the largest number of Moravians in the world are in Africa, because the missionaries reached out to Tanzania and all the African countries, so that's where the bulk of the Moravians are now.
In Africa.
North America has a very small number.
Okay. That's quite interesting. How have you all been able to intertwine the church story with the community story of blackness?
It's very intertwined because...
Were you a pivotal part of that? And are you? Well, obviously you are.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what led to your interest in history? Are you from Winston-Salem?
I am.
Okay. So obviously, but what was it that kind of kickstarted it for you to be like,
I just wanted I wanted the African American community to know that this is where it started.
Yeah.
This church is where it started. And a lot of the people that, after slavery, that ventured out in other parts of the community, this was Salem, then Winston came in 2019. I know that because my granddaddy told me. They combined.
No, you said 2019.
I mean,
1919.
1919. Yeah.
Okay.
They combined, but in a way, I just wanted the community to know about it,
How was your grandfather?
How?
Yeah, how was he? Like, was he a teacher, a lecturer of
He
Black
was a
history for you?
historian. He lived in another county. He didn't live in Winston.
Okay.
But he loved history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so,
were you always a kid that kind of soaked it up?
Yeah,
Okay,
I
so
was.
you were that person. Okay, you were like me then.
Yeah, I was.
That's good, because we need more of us.
And I like to pass it on.
Yeah.
I love passing it on. We have the graveyard out there.
Yeah.
But I grew up right here, and I didn't know that there was another graveyard that the slaves were buried in about a mile from here.
Really?
Up the hill.
Are you able to access it?
Oh yeah. I go up there and put the flowers out and do. On Good Friday, Winston-Salem Journal had a big article about it. About the church and the graveyard up there.
Okay.
If you can go and pull it up.
Yeah,
it's a very good article.
So, are we able to kind of go into where the cemetery is, so you can provide some context on when that project began and the purpose of it? Or is there some other things we need to look at in here? I see there's another room up here. We're going upstairs? Oh, okay. Let's go upstairs. I'm happy to know that this wasn't a situation to where individuals had to be sanctioned to sit only in the enslaved galleries.
No, they
like
had their own church. That, like I said,
there's a lot of good stuff.
The Moravians were very, very lenient about that, and they believed in educating the slaves. A lot of slaves weren't allowed to read and write.
For sure.
The Moravians were different.
Yeah.
You can just...
So let me ask you this, right? So because we know that so many individuals who were enslaved weren't allowed to read and write legally, what did some of the values that the Moravians had Is that kind of what drew you to
Yes.
be part of the church? And like,
Yes.
can you remember the moment and how that felt?
When I first started going, I was in my teens, early teens. And the Moravian minister then, like I said, was George Hall, who was a professor. I just love hearing him talk about the history of the church and just explaining everything. I get kind of emotional.
No, it's okay.
But I learned a lot, and I thought, I like this, you know.
So when you first found out that the Moravians did teach their
Oh,
enslaved
yeah.
humans to read,
I was just reading something down there before you came. There was a farm on the outside of Salem, where all of them were, and the Schumer farm. And he asked the Moravian Church if one of his slaves, a 10-year-old girl, could attend the college, the school, Moravian Academy. And they gave him permission, but she wasn't the only one. They allowed several black girls to go, and they didn't necessarily have to be slaves either.
okay,
But they mostly took in the Moravian congregation.
yeah. So that's hearing all these stories is what kind of
Yeah,
ushered you to say that
yeah.
this is where the congregation will be a part of.
And I thought, well, at least they halfway treated them right. You know, they did some good things, and I like that. Yeah.
All right. And so this room is set up to just kind of
This
to be a
was
display.
a children's classroom.
Okay.
The little chairs, and they've got it staged there. That's the children.
So they
had a
would be up here,
classroom
and
up
the
here.
adults would be down there. All right, and you all see how
This
it's set
is
up right
part of the part that was added on. So that room that we came into that was actually a classroom.
Okay.
They taught, the missionary women taught the slaves in there and taught the children up here. So they were very adamant about the slaves being educated.
here. Wow. And obviously these are pictures.
Oh, through history, yes.
Okay.
And it's amazing. I look back at these Sunday school classroom attendances, and I'm like, wow, how many people showed up. And then I think, well, Sunday was probably the only day that they could get to rest and relax, you know, so.
And is it traditional where services are held on Sundays here in the Moravian Church? Okay. All right.
Because this one is 1929. Some of them go back even further, but they had a large Sunday school. People were eager to come out and learn.
All right. So what do we
These
have
are some
here?
of the old stones when they redid the church, you know, remodeled the church.
But these are original stones.
These are original
Right,
stones.
it says Fanny right here.
See, you can tell that
1819 to 1831.
Uh-huh.
Joe died 1859. Gotcha.
But most of these, what you see, are the enslaved people.
Okay, most of these folks are the enslaved
Yeah.
people. Okay.
And you can tell by the dates.
Yeah. Okay. That's amazing.
This is Phyllis is one of our older ones. She died in 1828 at 21 years old.
Okay.
The
was born in
Moravians were
1807.
adamant, very good record keepers. You can go to the archives and pull up anything, and they're strict about that.
Yeah.
This was Reverend Rodney, who served. I mean, he came down here in '67, but his first service was actually '68. And this is the lady I was telling you about that went to the seminary.
Yeah, she was here for about 8
Sandra
years.
Thigpen.
Okay.
And they were the two ordained Moravian ministers,
Okay.
other than Reverend Hall, who was the first. That's the Happy Hill Church that the highway came through.
And it's gone.
Highway 52 came through there.
So we're going to be walking back out to the front. And in the front, there are multiple graves.
And
Were
we
you
had-
always aware that there were graves?
No, and most people living now, the people that went to church here before 52, which my husband's family did, they knew, but the graves were covered up. So we had a radar system to come in during the renovation of this building, and they found the graves. They couldn't tell you the names because the names are recorded at the office,
Right.
but they could tell if it was an adult or a child.
By the ground penetrating radar?
Uh-huh. And most of this area here was children. And
adults on this side?
adults are all over, but it seems that this area right here was children.
Yeah, because you see child right here.
Yeah, and you
then
got
child
adults
over there.
back there, you know.
Wow. And you said that this is one cemetery where
There's
formerly
another
enslaved
cemetery.
lives, but there's another one as
this
well.
one filled up, and God's Acre is the white Moravian cemetery. But there were slaves buried there, you know, during that time. But when this one filled up, they moved up the hill about a mile away, and it was full too. It was about over 300 graves up there.
Wow. And on this wall, I see a lot of names.
There are a lot of names.
Let's talk about that. 131 lives.
131.
Wow. And some of it has the occupation. It says Frank right here worked at the paper mill.
That's right.
Lewis, 1823, the son of Fanny and John. 1825, infant son of Samuel and Betsy. 1830, Fanny, wife of John. Lucy, 1831, trusted in the Savior's mercy. Wow, this is pretty descriptive.
And these are community members. They weren't just people that came here.
Yeah.
They were members. This 131 that you see were members.
Wow. That's pretty dope.
They even have the here, 1833, stillborn daughter, when she was born dead, you know, of Samuel and Betsy.
Yeah.
And this one, Peter Rose, a faithful scholar. When they redid this it was either the late 90s or early 2000s, they erected all of this.
How was it that day? Like when you, because you have been doing tours here and you have been educating so many people, you know, you've been educating so many people about this site. How was it when this was erected for you?
Amazing. It was a lot of history that I didn't know being raised here, you know. I learned a lot myself.
Do you find that people in the community, locals, or when this stuff started coming out, that they started getting a little bit more interested?
Yes. A lot of people my age, 70s, 80s, all my life, I'm quoting, all my life I lived here and I did not even know that church existed. That's what they say. And a friend of mine said he was raised over in Happy Hill Garden. He would walk through here going to town, and he saw the building, but he had no idea.
Wow.
And that's the comments I get from a lot of the black community.
Wow. And most of them most likely have relatives that are buried right here as well.
And I do get calls from people from out of state. They find
research.
they find out that they had relatives here. And last year I had a family reunion to come from Maryland.
Oh, really? That's dope. I love that.
And we do get groups like that.
Man.
Now the Black Festival is coming this year, and a lot of people come here from the Black Festival.
Okay.
But we do get people that find out that they have a connection to the church, you know.
So even though we know that there's bodies that are out there, it's good to know that there's some acknowledgement.
Yes.
You know, and it just wasn't a yard, you know. It was
I think
a resting place.
From what I read in the early 50s or before then, that we got to remember that this was Jim Crow era.
Yes.
And the surrounding people, everybody wasn't so friendly, you know. So the church members kind of felt uncomfortable a little. That's what I read.
Yeah.
And they wanted to move. The community had asked that they cover up the graves because it didn't look nice. So that actually happened.
Yeah.
And when we first came down here, these stones were here. This was put in 2000 or 2001, I think.
Okay.
But it was just grass, you know, because, like I say, the surrounding.
But did you know that there were graves here?
No.
So you didn't even know at
No,
all?
and a lot of the people
So who? Wow.
that lived around here came later didn't know.
Didn't know either.
But they had it on record, because, like I say, they keep all the history and all the records of the Moravian Church at the main office. And when there was, Old Salem wanted to redo this for tourist purposes, they got the records, and that's how that was.
Came into play. I like how you moved us over here in this shade.
Yeah, yeah.
So the Happy Hill community is over there, and folks would come from Happy Hill and walk over here. And
it was actually a branch or a trail.
Okay.
And there's a sign back there that says the trail to Happy Hill.
Okay.
Of course, you know, we can imagine it was just woods and probably a trail that they used.
Most definitely. Now, are there any graves behind here too?
No.
Okay. Wow. How proud are you that you've been able to live a long life and see all of this stuff come into fruition?
I'm very proud to see it, but I'm even more prouder to let people know about it, you know, to get the word out in the community. And not only the community, the world.
Yeah.
Because we had a guy come from, I want to say it was 2019 before COVID, from Washington. They were doing the Black Museum at that time, building it or whatever they were doing. And he came and got all the older members and did a real nice, interview with us.
Okay. So folks aren't shying away from the camera.
Oh,
we're putting it out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And so this is the older church, of course, right
here.
What is that used for now?
Nothing right now, because at COVID it shut down. They were doing tours there.
Okay.
But they're not. Old Salem owns the building. They're not doing anything right now. We want to purchase the building to keep it all together.
Yeah, for sure.
You know?
It only makes sense.
Yeah.
You should be able to purchase it for $1.
And the slaves, of course, and I learned this from one of the ladies that does a lot of the history, and she's written books on it. They made the bricks here. Actually, they constructed the building, and from what I understand, they cut down the logs and everything to build the first church.
Yeah.
But
so have you been able to identify
these bricks
some
were made
fingerprints?
by the slaves themselves.
Were you able to identify some fingerprints? Do you know
There
where some of
is-
them are?
She showed me one of the fingerprints, but it's right in here, but I forgot exactly where it was. One of the slaves, he was one of the brick makers, but I couldn't tell you which brick it is now.
Now, we know that Chris Paul, the basketball
Peter.
player, has a connection here.
Peter Oliver.
Did Peter Oliver, did he attend this church? Does
Peter
he have any
Oliver
connection?
did, not this particular building. When Peter Oliver came along, I'm not even sure, it may have been during when they were worshiping up on the farm, or either the Lord Church. But Peter Oliver's mother, Chris Paul's mother, was a descendant from Peter Oliver.
Yes.
Yeah.
Little known history facts.
And I grew up with Chris Paul's grandfather, the one that was murdered.
Yes.
I grew up with the whole family. We called him Chili. But it was 4 or 5 boys and one girl, Brenda.
Yeah.
But I grew up with his aunts and uncles.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing to see his episode on Finding Your Roots, and
Yeah.
just to see how emotional he got, and just, that's what it's all
It's
about.
very emotional, and when, like I say, the family reunions that come here, that they get very emotional.
Yeah, that's good. Well, how can people book a tour? Is it an official way in which you can book a tour? Can you give us that information?
Yeah, you can. We got a website. You can go on there, and then there's a phone number. But most of it comes through me. They call me,
Okay.
and I think my phone number's on there.
Okay.
Or they go through Triad.
Cultural
Mm-hmm.
arts. Okay.
And they get in touch with me.
Okay.
Because I get a lot of tours from them.
Okay, so y'all
Yeah.
feeding off of each other, doing what community's supposed to
Yeah.
do. How important is it that this story is told with the overarching story of Old Salem? Because this story can get forgotten about. It sits over in the corner. Everything else is up there. So
and actually it was forgotten about until, we decided that we wanted to get the story out there about this church.
Yeah.
And this is actually, think about it, the beginning of Winston and Salem.
For sure. Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, this has been great. You told me 30 minutes, so I'm going to honor your time.
That's okay. But a lot of people don't even realize that their ancestors, if they were from this area, they came out of here.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Whether you're up there in Happy Hill or the other spot that you were talking about as well. And so, I greatly appreciate this opportunity. It's always a blessing for me to be able to come into people's communities and they just have open arms, and of course the great Southern hospitality if I'm in the South. And I learned so much, and that's why I love doing this, is because I tell people all the time, when I look at this and I edit it for the first time, I'm absorbing it like a sponge, And so I hope that everyone that watches this episode is able to glean some information. If you have any ancestral ties here to Winston-Salem, and if you're a black person, African American, however you want to identify yourself, then you most likely have some connections.
That's exactly right, for sure. Because this is where it started.
Yes, for sure. And so what I'll do is I'll leave some information as it relates to the website and the location in the description of this video. And like I always tell you, please subscribe, share, and consider becoming a member. It helps with me traveling to bring these stories to you. And y'all know gas is sky high right now, so that ain't no doubt, right? So any last words from you?
No.
No?
I just wish people would come and take part in the tours and the history.
Yeah.
A lot of history. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that's it from Old Salem, Winston-Salem, y'all. Peace and blessings.